very much.
It's very exciting.
Just upset. Thanks for the honor. You should have. Ray won't be here. Okay, thank you. Well, I'll teach you to set I would give her the arms. Pardon? Just for the arms. Danny.
Yeah.
You're too late, sir.
Am I not the only one who's running late? I had to find a soup.
That's okay.
That's good. I need something to wipe my feet on.
Terrible.
Call this council meeting to order at 7:02. So, and we have a motion to accept the agenda. Moved by Carl, seconded by Jim, Councilor Campbell. And declaration of pecuniary interests. Seeing none, I'll now turn the chair over to Reeve Vincent.
Thank you, Dave. For me, it is the season for harvest, and I got behind some farm vehicles. Further slowed me down.
Be careful.
Well, I figured it was better to be careful than get hurt, somebody get hurt. Okay. Rick? Yep. Well, I guess that was what I was doing. That's one thing, with the number of vehicles and corn harvest underway. It's always good to remind people that it isn't safe to try and pass, even if you have to go a mile or so to get past. And there's a number of things on that there's an official opening for the Maitland River Elementary School on Thursday, and that I feel that it's going to be a very nice official opening. But moving on to reading of the minutes of the previous meetings. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Vauden, all in favor? Carried. Okay, deputations. You introduce the first one here.
Okay, thank you, Reeve. We have Mike Elcock and Gord Grant from the Goderich Lions Club. Welcome. Okay.
Good evening. Reeve Vincent. I quickly scratched some of Dave Reach's name down because I thought I was going to have to address Chair. Good evening, Reeve Vincent, members of North Huron Council, the live audience, and the people in the gallery. My name is Mike Elcock, and I'm here with Gord Grant, representing Camp Klahani and the Goderich Lions Club. Gord is going to start by introducing a history of Camp Klahani and where it's located, and I'll let Gord take it from here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for making this time available for us. We really appreciate it. What we're about to share with you is a feel-good story. It's a win-win story. Back in the early 70s, John and Marion Heinmarsh, who some of you probably have heard of and know of them, donated just under 8 acres of land to the local Girl Guides down in Goderich on Blocks Point Road. And the Girl Guides jumped in with both feet and ran a very successful camp there for 40-some-odd years, keeping it in the black, not relying on the income from the Central Council of Girl Guides in Toronto. And they had help along the way, and among one of their primary supporters was Goderich Lions Club. So we've been involved with this camp for quite a few years. In the 90s, we had a building blitz going on where we built 2 buildings and connected them with a breezeway. We brought in over 300 loads of fill to raise the ground level because the water table there is quite high. So we've been partnering with the Girl Guides for a long time. In 2007, the Girl Guide Council in Toronto decided they were going to close a number of camps in Ontario. They felt they were no longer viable. And the local Girl Guides, which were not just from Goderich, they were from the surrounding community in Brown County, fought back as best they could, but they were fighting against a pretty big operation in Toronto. So they approached us and asked if the Goderich Lions Club could step forward one more time and try to help them. So Mike and I took the role of co-chairs of the Camp Klahani Committee on at that point. And for the last 4 years, it's been a bumpy, rocky road. We've been through a number of legal battles with the Girl Guides of Toronto. We had tremendous support from the law firm in Goderich. They donated hundreds and hundreds of billable hours, which they did on a pro bono basis. We kicked in money where we could, and after a lot of serious negotiations, the bottom line arrived at the end of July of this year, and we bought the camp from the Girl Guides in Toronto for $110,000. So since that time, we've been in the process of trying to rebuild the camp, bring it back to a workable level. I'm pleased to tell you that we've already had Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts out there using the camp, even though it's not been officially reopened already. We're still in the process of trying to bring it back up to scratch. So it's a great story. The intent is that we are going to make that camp available to all youth groups in Brown County. We're going to try to keep it either fee free or absolute minimum fee. We're going to rely, and we'll continue to rely on input from the community to help support that effort. Mike will give you some more details of some of the things that we've gone through and some of the help we've had. But it's a great story. But the story isn't over yet. It's actually just beginning in certain ways, because we have every intention of keeping that camp open for all youth groups and other interested groups throughout Huron County in the area. So I'm going to let Mike take it at this point. He can fill in some of the blanks, but it's been a great journey. It's not over yet.
So as Gord has touched on, now that the Goderich Lions Club own this camp, we plan on operating it as a youth camp. So it'll still be open to Girl Guides, but it'll be open to any youth organization basically in the area. When the Girl Guides first approached us, they called Camp Klahani a magical place. And when Gord and I got involved as co-chairs on this committee, we definitely found out it was a magical place. It was magical enough for John and Marion Heinmarsh to donate it to the local Girl Guides for the cost of $1. It was magical enough and special enough to entice the Goderich Lions Club to make over $75,000 in capital improvements in the camp through the 90s, when the Girl Guides still owned it. And the camp is special enough to encourage a small group of local Girl Guides to take up a legal battle against the Girl Guides of Ontario to return the camp to its proper owners, and that's the kids. Camp Klahani has been a priority of the Goderich Lions Club for almost 4 years, and it still is a priority, and we're taking it into the future. We made the initial contact with the Girl Guides of Ontario to purchase the camp. And that would be the cleanest, easiest way without having to drag anybody through a legal battle, but we were declined. Then we started a lengthy legal battle, and as Gord touched on, the Ross firm donated over $60,000 in legal fees on a pro bono basis, and the Goderich Lions Club picked up $16,000 in legal fees. And then we bought the camp for $110,000. Now that we've acquired the camp, there's been a huge outpouring of moral and financial support from businesses, municipalities, private individuals, and although most municipalities can't commit a donation until after they refer it to budget, we've already received over $30,000 from private individuals and businesses, and that money continues to come in. The Camp Klahanie Board of Directors has now decided we have to plan for a plaque to commemorate the individuals, businesses, service groups, and municipalities that are pledging their financial support so that they can be commemorated at the camp forever. And more importantly, we have already had numerous inquiries by various youth groups wishing to make the camp, wishing to use the camp this fall as well as into next year. And it's very encouraging to realize that there's a real need for youth camps in this area. We started restoring the camp to its previous condition. As the Girl Guides left it in 2009, there was no maintenance done, and we've repaired the roof on one of the buildings that they call the Lodge House, and we still have 2 more roofs to replace next spring. We repaired the plumbing and replaced the water heater, just to name a few of the repairs. Going into the future, we would like to make improvements that would allow co-ed youth groups to utilize the camp more easily. Previously, the camp was only utilized by Girl Guides, so they only have 1 washroom, and any co-ed youth groups that are currently using the camp have to be creative in how they schedule washroom assignments. In the long term, as the demand for the camp warrants, we'd like to expand the camp with sleeping quarters as an option to sleeping in tents. Currently, campers sleep in tents or on the floor of the Lodge House. The current Girl Guides that use the camp put their older Girl Guides in tents, and then the younger ones on the floor in the Lodge House. We hope by sharing this information with you tonight that we send a message to the residents, parents, children, and youth leaders of North Huron that Camp Klahanie will soon be open for business to all the youth groups in Huron County. We also wish to inform the residents and council of North Huron that if they wish to make a donation to Camp Klahanie based on past experiences, as many of your residents have probably camped there, or future considerations based on what the Goderich Lions Club is planning on doing with the camp, the Goderich Lions Club would graciously accept any donation, and as a registered charity, we can provide a tax receipt. And is it okay if I leave information with you to give to anybody who may have questions on how they can donate to the camp? Thank you very much for your time, and is there any questions?
Brock.
I was wondering if there would be any interest in, say, including that camp in some of our recreation advertising next year as another avenue of camping interest. I don't think that they would be competitors with our program, but it might be an interesting offering.
Yeah, especially to help get the word out to your youth groups, the cadets, the church groups, anybody who might be interested in camping.
It's just something that I would suggest that we can talk about. And
Sure.
Yeah, so we're just putting that recognition guide together now, so if you have a business card size something or a quarter page or something, I'll leave you my card and you can,
I think I have
I
it.
think you have my information, so, yeah, get
I
that
should
to
take
us.
it anyway from my other file.
What's that?
I should take it from my other file, my non-work related file.
Yeah, and just, maybe we can coordinate something,
Okay,
okay?
perfect.
That would be very much appreciated.
Dave?
I missed where the location of it is.
It's just south of Goderich on Blacks Point Road, between Highway 21 and Lake Huron. It's about 800 meters to the lake.
It's a 5-minute drive south of Goderich, and one thing we didn't mention, kind of important, it's a short walk from the camp to the beach.
Yeah.
So the kids have access for swimming or water activities within a short walk from the campgrounds themselves. And it's essentially a dead-end street, so there isn't a whole lot of traffic, and it's a great place for kids.
I don't think there's a whole lot of youth camps in Huron County.
So are you going to allow weekend camps or week camps, like I'm saying, for youth groups?
Yes, oh yeah.
Okay.
Through the week, weekends, day use, anything. We're coming up with how we're going to allow scheduling. Like obviously our priority would be for people who are scheduling overnight camps. So we wouldn't want a day use to interfere with the weekend use, so we're going to work out the details on taking bookings for weekend camps ahead of bookings for somebody who wants to use it for the afternoon. But yeah, there will be day camps. There's a full kitchen out there, a lodge house, a gazebo that joins the lodge house with the kitchen, and
There's enough
3
picnic
acres.
tables literally for about 30 people,
yeah.
just with the picnic tables and the grease wood.
Mm-hmm. We'd like to build a second washroom so that it makes scheduling co-ed groups. Currently they do it, it's just a little more difficult.
I would like some of your contact information, because I know of a fairly large group that would take interest.
You got one of those?
I got one of these.
Oh, it's even better.
This is,
Okay.
would everybody like one?
We can get coffee.
I'll leave one with the clerk.
It's, up from that, unless you have a big supply with you, Mike.
I have a few. I'll leave one with the clerk and maybe he can
Yes.
scan it and email it out.
Bernie, you had a
Yeah,
question or comment?
Just as a former Cub and Cub leader, Scout and Scout leader, Adventure and Pack leader, and as an adult, put my son through Cubs and Scouts and became an adult leader at that time. I wish you guys all the best. If you leave the information with us, I'm sure as a council we'll sit down and mull this over. As you're aware, it's always the money thing when it comes to councils. But very interested in seeing you guys do this because I can remember as a kid going camping and how much fun it was.
Yeah.
And now as an adult, zooming 150 miles an hour down the highway, just looking at the course, and I don't have time anymore.
Yeah.
So no, really, it's fantastic.
Well, the whole thing is for the kids, and it's to give them an opportunity to enjoy camping. It's, I realize it's not terribly close to the immediate area, but it is close enough that it's not an onerous drive to go somewhere. We're going to continue to try to upgrade it as much as we can, and to whatever degree we can manage it through donations. And the intent is not to charge youth groups for it, but we can possibly figure out a way to do that and keep our heads above water financially. And if it comes to that, we're going to have such, just have minimal charges. So try to keep it as available and open and as receptive as possible for the kids.
It's fantastic.
That, on behalf of council, thank you very much for making the enlightening announcement of how things are working with it and how you want to move forward. And yes, it will be part of our budget discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, Connie, would you like to introduce the second delegation?
Sure. As you probably are very well familiar with the next delegation, the members from the Alice Munro Festival of Writers and Readers. Yep. So we have on hand Karen Stewart, Beth Ross, Laurel Armstrong, and Verna Steffler. And actually, Karen's going to be speaking to you tonight.
Oh.
Sure.
So good evening. It's our pleasure to be here tonight to share our good news story for the 2015 Alice Munro Writers and Readers Festival.
I was wondering.
The world has just caught up with North Huron and Alice Munro Writers and Readers Festival's steering committees with regard for our famous author. Recently, the Swedish Academy, when announcing the Alice Munro winning the 110th Nobel Prize for Literature on the 10th of October, they called her the Master of Contemporary Short Story. And as you know, the Alice Munro Writers and Readers Festival is designed to encourage emerging writers and celebrate storytelling and reading through unique events and venues across North Huron. This year, our short story competition had a 96% increase in submissions over last year, so that was pretty significant. Up in the corner, you'll see a photo of our judges, who are Dick Allen, John Cull, and Catherine McLeod. They set aside the month of August to review these stories, many of them which they read 2 or 3 times, and sometimes more. When they're making their decisions, they rate them all, and then they get together and they talk about it, and they came up with the top 10 finalists, 5 in the youth and 5 in the adult category. So they were very busy during the month of August, and if we have another increase next year, we're going to have 2 judging panels to get through them all. Our 2013 winners. So this will show you that there was a nice range of winners from the youngest, I believe, age 16, to the oldest, which was close to 80. They're coming from all over Ontario, and in fact, we had submissions from almost every province across Canada, as well as a couple from Pennsylvania and a couple from England. We also had a couple of people come to our festival from England who made their trip to North America around our dates. That was very exciting. So that was a specific draw for those folks. So during the festival weekend of September 29th to 30th, we started off with a writer's workshop, self-editing with Melanie Chambers. We had about 15 participants in that. We had a panel discussion and a luncheon served by Live In on reading Munro. And we had a stage presentation of stories of the women of the Women's Institute with theater professional Peggy Coffey. Melanie Chambers, pictured in that top photograph, is a University of Western Ontario instructor and a travel writer. And the bottom is our panelist that was at the luncheon event, Mary Wolfe, Kim Jernigan, and Gary Draper. Sorry. Mary Wolfe is an educator and an avid Alice fan. She's a former owner of the bookshop in Bayfield, so she had a lot of great connections with it. Kim Jernigan is a journalist, and Gary Draper is a retired University of Waterloo professor. We also had a couple of more events. Reading Aloud in Huron. This was an open mic event with songs, poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and it was hosted at the radio station at CKNX. The North Huron Museum was open in the afternoon with docents on site to share the Alice Munro collection and the reading garden. And we had our gala appreciating Alice. About 80 guests gathered at the Golf and Country Club. 10 finalists read from their winning stories. Awards were presented. Our keynote speaker was award-winning author Wei-Sin Choi. Silent auction, music, literary trivia, and a nice harvest dinner. This is a photograph of our guest speaker, Wei-Sin Choi, who was speaking with one of our finalists. And then it's just a picture of some of our gala guests at the bottom. On Sunday, we had a brunch and a walking tour around Alice's town. So people were satisfied with the experiences shared during the festival. The workshop participants were engaged. The panel discussion was lively, and guests would have enjoyed a longer presentation. And the Blythe Inn served a delicious lunch where guests enjoyed their table mates and lively conversation. The afternoon presentation was a unique theater experience of familiar stories of the Women's Institute, a dynamic group of women who shaped our rural communities. The open mic event was a successful surprise in that participants were eager to approach the mic and share their creativity through songs, poetry, readings, and comedy. The North Huron Museum welcomed an increased number of guests due to the festival's efforts, and the gala was a true celebration of writing and reading. Each writer read from their submitted story, and the audience wanted a chance to hear more, while Waste and Joy created a special atmosphere for the writers in attendance. You were the presenting partner, and we were also able to attract some lead sponsors and partners, being Satan's Home Hardware, Royal Homes, Howard Mutual Insurance, the County of Huron's Cultural Services and Libraries, the Blythe Festival, and CKNX Radio. We also had a number of other sponsors and supporters who provided cash donations as well as articles for our silent auction. We had good community support. The North Huron Partnership, your in-kind support included venue access and human resources. So we had the Blythe Memorial Community Hall for 2 events. We met at the North Huron Museum all year long, and also the museum was open during the festival. The Community Development Coordinator, we're honored to have Connie on our committee. She's very helpful and connected, which is great. We also had access to Mary Beth, your North Huron summer student, who was really great help for logging all of the submissions and making sure everybody was paid and all that sort of thing. It was quite a task, and it took a good deal of time, I think. So it was great to have Mary Beth helping with that, and hosting of the AliceMunroFestival.ca website. So thank you. This is your volunteer steering committee. I know you recognize most of these names. This is a financial statement, so you'll see where our revenue was just over $10,000. Our expenses were just over $9,500, so we have posted a small surplus this year, which is great to get us going for next year. And our partnership continues. So in 2014 and beyond, we hope to grow the festival still over the 3 to 5 years. Certainly the recognition brought to Alice in the last month is going to help us do that. So, and gaining awareness and a place among Canada's important literary celebrations and authors community. Contribute to the quality and diversity of community life in North Huron and the County of Huron. And to provide opportunities for economic activity and cultural partnerships. We want to acknowledge Alice Munro's win of the Nobel Prize for Literature. And we want to celebrate our literary landscape, which is the heart of Alice's works, now acknowledged globally through a true sense of place. So let's honor Alice together. We would like to have a celebration on Sunday, December 8th, which is very close to the date that she receives her Nobel Prize in Stockholm. And we would like, of course, the Township of North Huron to take the lead on this with us. But we also would like to reach out to the municipalities of Morris Turnberry and Central Huron and have a champagne and dessert party at the Golf and Country Club on Sunday afternoon from 3 o'clock until 4:30 with very brief greetings and a toast to Alice, which we will record and make sure that she gets. This is just a start. So a champagne and dessert party. There's also some plans afoot for long-term recognition, and Connie's going to speak to those.
Yes, I'm sure some of you are aware that we have initiated with the Ministry of Training Colleges and University a labor market partnership that we are looking at taking part in. The LMP is a program that allows a community to study and create a blueprint for job creation, skills development, and local economic community development. In this case, it would possibly allow for studying the effects on the area of Alice Munro's win of the Nobel Prize. And the LMP program is jointly supported and funded by both the MTCU and the parties to any eventual agreement. So there are members from North Huron, Morris Turnberry, Central Huron, the Cultural Services, and HAHN, Huron Arts and Heritage Network, will be meeting with MTCU representatives on November 12th. So.
asking the Township of Huron to allow the Alice Munro Writers and Readers Festival to take the lead in the activities celebrating and honoring Alice Munro, and to continue your support for festival development into 2014 and beyond. And for the festival, we're looking, again, for in-kind support for venues, human resources, website hosting. We also feel that we need to apply for copyright for Alice Munro Writers and Readers Festival and funding. We are asking for a small increase this year of $500 which will be put back into promotional opportunities to build awareness a little further afield. And we would ask to come back in spring 2014 with a full presentation of our festival plans, which are still just into the very early stages of planning. So there was Alice's first public acknowledgement was held this weekend at the International Festival of Authors in Vancouver. So I just wanted to read a little bit that was in the Toronto Star today, and I'll leave this paper with you. Author Colm McCann talked about Alice being a master of, as an implosion, a white hot star. If anyone is the supreme chef of this white star, it is Alice Munro, McCann said. He said her stories force readers to go through the dark to negotiate the light. I see her as the antidote to despair. She applauds the vitality and resilience of the human spirit. So Alice Munro is regarded as a literary star in Huron County. Is her creative heart and home. Together we contribute to celebrate her work and contribution to the world of literature through the North Huron Alice Munro Writers and Readers Festival. Our little committee recognizes Alice's contribution and achievements, and now the world has caught up. Thank you.
Questions, comments, council? Dave?
I guess about halfway through the year, you made a presentation to council, and council decided that I should sit on your committee. And I just have to say that I have never worked with a committee that is as inspired and driven as this group of ladies, and I want to congratulate you and say thank you for your work, because you do tremendous work, and you're an inspiration to all of us. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Well, but I will definitely ditto that because I have enjoyed working with all of you in different situations, but it's always been a very, let's get things done, and let's not just do it halfway. So that thank you definitely to Huron Tourism and for coming and helping out and making things happen bigger and better. And that, as always with Verna, that she makes things happen. So thank you very much. That will definitely be looked at in the budget as well.
Thank you.
Moving to business arising from previous meetings, point one. Do you want to speak to it, Gary?
Council will recall that the last council meeting passed a motion authorizing the Reed clerk to sign an agreement between the township and ability to erect the telecommunications tower. Public Works shall comply. Bell Mobility and the agent working with them, who's liaising with the municipality. We'd like council to pass the following motion. They have done this in other jurisdictions, and I ask that you give consideration to this motion and consider passing it this evening.
Questions or comments, Vernon?
No, we can pass this motion later on, are we? Or are you looking for it now?
My preference would
That we probably should motion before we go to, definitely before we go to the bylaw, that if council's in favor of it.
Put that motion forward.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bailey, seconded by Deputy Reeve. Discussion? Okay. It looks like they're telling me to call the vote. All those in favor? Carried. And from the previous meeting, United Way Frontier left a funding request. Thoughts on that? Gary?
I think staff are just looking for more direction from council. You recall that the United Way made a presentation at the last council meeting, but I don't think there was any follow-up discussion at that council meeting. So we were just looking for further direction from council, whether you want to make a decision tonight or whether to defer it to budget deliberations. We're just looking for direction.
Councillor Bailey?
Can you refresh my memory? Have we donated to them yet this year?
Just defer to you.
Actually, our check was issued in January of 2013, and I'm not sure what their fiscal year or when their funding runs, Gary. I'm not sure if you were aware of that or not, but we did give them $500 in January of 2013.
And we allocated, how much money did we allocate them for this in our budget, or different, how much did we give them last year?
2012, that had come in partway through the year, so we had given $200 in 2012, and then in 2013, we increased our donation allocation to them up to $500.
Which we've already given.
Yes, in January 2013.
And just further to that, the commitment that was made in January of this year was for the 2012 to 2013 campaign. So we know that they have embarked on the 2013-2014 campaign. So the request that we received from the way is really for the new campaign.
James?
I make a motion that we leave this to
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion. Okay. Those in favor? Carried. Nothing, health and safety. You going to read the administration, Gary?
Okay, council has a report that I provided regarding campaign 1419 and Huron Geomatics. And this report was based on informal discussions that we've had with the campaign 1419 committee. My sense of that discussion was that council was supportive of retaining Huron Geomatics to provide the base laser scan services of Memorial Hall, and that cost would be around $13,000. There was also discussion between council and the 1419 group that any additional services that 1419 may want or need would be at their expense. So looking for a motion from council to approve this expenditure. Myself and my colleague, the Director of Recreation Facilities, need to confirm with the committee whether the expense needs to take place in 2013 or whether it can be deferred to 2014. My read of the situation is they'd like to move on this fairly quickly. That being said, they may not be quite ready to use this technology, but that's something that we'll find out in the meantime.
I'll make the motion that we commit the $13,000 to Hearing Genomics for the scan of Live Memorial Hall.
Okay. Discussion? Okay. On this, I will make comment myself that I believe that when we have the money in this year's budget to be able to do this, I think this is a very strong action by this council saying, yes, we believe in the project of doing renovations as needed on Memorial Hall. This is a baseline as to exactly what's there. And also, it is supporting a very, I think, important business from North Huron with Huron Geomatics, with their leading edge technologies. And that I think that there's a synergy of both of them working together to bring many benefits to the municipality. James, would you like to?
I'd like to add the addition to that, such as the CAD drawings, plans, and 3D models are extra and will be at the expense of the committee. So we present this motion to the committee. That is in writing, that's what we agreed to, so that there's no discussion further down the road. That's okay with the ones making the motion?
Yeah, sure.
I would agree to that.
Anything further on discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Moving to Director of Corporate Services, Deputy Clerk. Oh, so that's a reminder. And moving to point 4, Recreation and Facilities. Pat, you want to lead off?
Yeah, I guess it's a very short one-page report with a number of attachments. At the end of every year, as we roll into the new year, we reset our rates and fees for the Recreation and Facilities Department, memberships, admissions, rentals, and such. So I guess I'm looking for council to adopt the new rates and fees so that we can input those into our 2014 budget and project our revenues for the upcoming year. As well, we have obligations to our members who are on pre-authorized payment to give them 2 months' notice of any fee increase, so that is now to let them know for our January increase. I'm not sure if there's any other questions. We did, in cases where there were questions whether our rates were equitable, we did do a lot of looking into comparables with other municipalities and other services in the area. And in some cases where we knew we were right on track, we just added a 2% increase for cost of living and extra hydro and all those other costs that always continue to add on. So most are a 2% increase. In some cases they've stayed the same, and in some cases been a slightly more increase than that. But on the chart it does outline what our rate was last year, the year before, and what we're projecting for 2014.
James?
I guess my biggest concern, Pat, is that we are competitive. And we don't want to be the highest, we don't want to be the lowest, but we want to be somewhere in there that we're not going to lose people because we're too high.
Yeah, I think in certain things like ice rentals and where we're comparing apples to apples, it's very easy to do competitive analysis. And in looking, for example, we did an ice rental analysis and we're right in the middle. When we look at things like halls, you know, some halls hold 600, some hold 300, some have a liquor license, some do not. So it's a little bit more difficult to compare apples to apples. But we also looked across the board at swimming lesson fees, what people are charging for pool rentals across all the indoor pools in the area, and 3 outdoor pools to make sure that we were in line with what the others are charging.
When you did this, are we covering our increased cost for actually running everything, or are we going behind it? Is this being covered by the people that are using it, or is there going to be more burden on the taxpayers for such things as hydro, heat, hired staff, etc.?
Well, most of the rate increases are right in line with our plan, which we presented as far as for some of the things like the complex projections for revenue and expenses. So some of those fees are along that line. We've increased them more than others, but this should keep us right on track where we are now with expenses and revenues. However, if you can predict where hydro's going, you're a better person than I. But we do watch those rates as well as we look at these.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I move that we adopt this report.
So, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Everything else is going smooth?
Always.
Okay, moving to the utility department.
Yeah, we had a meeting with Bruce Potter here, and there's 2 projects in particular that both of them are to maintain and to possibly increase the surplus capacity for development purposes in Wayne and Blythe. So there's 2 motions there. One is for the upgrade to the Blythe well supply, as well as the putting in the well pump at well 3 up there. And so the motion is for the consideration to pass the motion to include those in the development charges.
I have 2
Either of you.
And, Donna?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things too, thanks, John. So we've been talking about these 2 projects for quite a while, and when we implemented our development charges bylaw, there were no water projects included in those charges because, as I said, these 2 projects weren't contemplated at that time. So even though our bylaw has only been in place for a couple of years, we have these 2 projects that have now come up. And we don't know at this point how much, if any, would be recoverable on the development charges, but by passing a motion, we don't lose out on the opportunity to recover funds from that avenue. So a background study is required as part of the development charges, and so that will tell us if there is any potential recovery for these 2 projects. So we have 2 separate motions that we would be looking for, and the first one would be that Council of the Township of North Huron hereby declares that the Blythe Well Upgrades Project would be subject to development charges. The municipality intends to collect a portion of the project costs benefiting future development through a DC charge subject to the completion of a development charges background study. So that's motion number 1. And the second motion is the same. Sorry, do you want to do them one at a time?
I'll do that one
Sure.
to keep it clear. Councillor Bailey moves.
Yes.
Councillor Campbell seconds. Discussion? Rob?
Yeah, I have a question. I've been reading in AMO's report about some comments that they have regarding development charges and some percentages that they felt were unfair, and quite a number of issues that they have they're trying to bring to the government's attention. And I wonder if that could be included in the study of the circumstances. I'd like to know if we are affected adversely by some of these limitations in the present state, and if we want to state a position to the government on those charges.
They're almost two separate topics, actually, but we do have to look at both of those. Our development charges are discounted by 10%. I don't know if you remember all that through the whole study and such, but they are discounted. And they're really doing a whole review of the development charges, and they have opportunities for municipalities to comment, etc. I actually forwarded that whole piece on to Matt Pearson at BM Ross today to be able to discuss some of that further with him. So whether he would include it in something like this, I'm not sure at this point, but I'll definitely get his comments on that.
Maybe it's too general an issue for this specific one.
Yeah,
I realize that, but I just want to make sure that we have our say on this and see what the implications are.
Thanks.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, the second part, Donna?
Thank you. The second one is the same. The Council of the Township of North Huron hereby declares the Wingham Water Well Pump Upgrades Project subject to development charges. The municipality intends to collect a portion of the project cost benefiting future development through a DC charge, subject to the completion of a development charges background study.
Bailey and Campbell. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Moving to new business. The Lions have requested permission to close Josephine Street from Scott Street to Park Drive to 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, November 30th for the Santa Claus Parade. Campbell and Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Moving to council information, folks and councilors would like clarification on.
I'd like to raise a question about check number 002962, $1,446 for snow removal. I'm not pushing the season a little bit.
What page are you on there, Brock?
It's
And who's it payable to?
payable to Blythebrook Farms.
That's at East Walnut
That's East
landfill.
Walnut landfill. And I believe that's.
It's snowing
for 2
there?
years. That's for 2 years.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He's already brought it to my attention, and it's just in case it comes up, make sure you clarify that was 2 years snow removal at the landfill.
Okay.
How did that work with our budget, by the way?
I don't know, he didn't pay much the first year.
It isn't listed in this. There is the public meeting, the 21st of November, for discussion over the rail bed trail in 12th to Godrich. It is in the third point, yeah. But I think that is something, and I will mention to Pat, we need somebody to be able to run the elevator because there is some wheelchair-bound people that want to be at that.
Okay, I'll make sure.
But that's the only thing with it, but I knew there had been a request for that. Rob?
This is just a question. I don't have a feeling one way or the other, but should we have a position on this so that we're prepared for this meeting, and we can comment on what the plans are and that sort of thing?
I would rather see it be a really open public meeting, and everybody is expected to bring their own views to it, and possibly have, rather than the township has decided, I think this meeting is to bring information forward and bring a number of our ratepayers out for their opinions on it.
Yes, I wasn't necessarily thinking of a final decision, but sort of what are the questions that we should be asking as a municipality? I think we have issues that perhaps are not germane to the general public.
I have to agree with Brock. I'm really not up on this subject, but of course the first thing that comes to mind is if this is running through our territory, who's going to pay the upkeep?
I think we've attended some of these meetings already. I know that Brock has attended and our staff have gone as well. And the same questions keep coming to the table, that being one of them, maintenance, access of ATVs on the trail, and how the trail will be shared. So I think those are the two principal questions our municipality has with how this will work. And of course, there's all sorts of other questions, like how's it going to be marketed and promoted, and what are people going to see when they pick up the trail guide. But I think those are the things we all want to hear about. So we will go, and we have those questions in our forefront as we come to every meeting. Rob, I don't think I've missed any of the major key ones. That's the two ones that stick in my mind as the ones that we want some answers to, and yet we haven't really got answers yet.
Yes, and I attended one of the meetings at Millbank, and it was quite an eye-opener. They raised a lot of points that I hadn't heard in our discussions, like gates that were going to be necessary at some farms to keep people out or keep cattle in, and there was a gentleman there from Kitchener who, I think it was Kitchener, or Guelph maybe, suggesting all kinds of things that they were prepared to put in gates and bridges and all sorts of things, so that there must be some money there for maintenance and development.
I was just going to add, I think everybody who attends these things, this is a fantastic idea. If we can make this happen, wouldn't this be amazing? All of those things continue to come up at these meetings, and they're working through, I think, all of those ideas, issues, concerns, and we'll be bringing those to the meeting for sure. And I'm sure new ideas and questions will come up as well from the public.
So at these meetings, and we're not going to decide all of a sudden that North Huron owns all this land, and then we're going to decide who's going to pay for it later. These meetings are just about, is this conceptual idea going to work? Just wondering where anything like this.
If this were to go forward, I'm quite sure there's going to be land agreements with each of the landowners, which would include us, that this trail would march through. So we're not there yet. And when we see that, we'll know the intricate details of that. Who will use it, how will it be signed, and all of those kinds of things. It's a lot of people at the table to try and make this happen. I think they're just in the feeling out stages, gathering feedback, and sharing where they are on their progress of getting this project pushed through.
Thank you.
That's my understanding
Yeah.
at this point.
It's approximately 2 months ago, I attended a meeting in Fergus for bicycle trails, and that this, if it worked and went through, would be a side shoot of what the Quebec government actually did. There's a trail from Montreal to the Ontario border that has got extended right around following the waterways to Sarnia, with the Grey Bruce trails to the north of us. It probably won't be all that long if for the connecting route. Goes from Sarnia up to connect to the side trails in Great Bruce. There's a number of points then that for the Guelph to Godrich, Neil Rental and myself are the two appointed county councillors to attend the meetings, so that I have attended a number of them. And this other seminar that I went to gave me a big piece of the background, and that the one farmer from Wellington County that was against basically the Kissing Bridge Trail and the Waterloo and Wellington end of it, he has became one of the strongest supporters. And the one thing that he said, the more it's used, the more it's policed, and the avid hikers probably are the best ones at cleaning up any garbage that somebody else leaves. So that I'm trying to keep an open mind on it, and that while individual landowners adjacent will have many concerns, that I think we need to have them addressed properly. There's a number of things in legislation that will probably come out at the meeting or supplementary, and I'm not going to take time to try going through some of them now. James?
I'm not disapproving of it, cost, as long as we're not on with the cost of what's going through. Like there's places where there'll have to be bridges built over the Maitland River because they have been removed.
Yes.
Who covers those costs?
Initially, there's talk of that long trek around, as much as almost 5 miles to get from one side of the river to the other. And you know exactly where I'm talking.
I know exactly where you're talking about, yes.
The one thing that I will mention, North Huron does have a lease for Greenway Trail. Greenway Trail would become part of this. And that is one of the things that I'm trying to stay on top of and protect North Huron's interests.
Okay.
Okay. If there's no, oh, go ahead, James.
Item number 4. This is probably something that we kind of touched on a little bit last meeting. And I still have concerns that we are going to lose some of our postal services that we have been privileged to enjoy for many years. We're going to lose some of our services over this. And I think we should be putting a letter towards, there's going to be a survey, I think, available that we could sign into too.
Gary, you
I was just going to say, I know Donna has had some recent conversations with Canada Post officials as per council's direction. Could you update council on those discussions?
Yeah, last meeting we were talking about the effects of e-post on entering into e-post and the future of Canada Post. And it was a really good point, so I'm glad, Brock, that you had raised that. So I followed up on that. And I had many conversations with our Canada Post rep back and forth the next day, and he did, which I sent to all of you, he did declare that the e-post does not or would not have any detrimental effect on Canada Post. However, he did say in the next breath that the whole Canada Post organization was under review in all their services, and that if there's any hopes, he had suggested that e-post, they have to go e-post and all of those types of new businesses in order to be able to stay in business. So, and that's basically what a lot of this package information is talking about, is that they're going to, the services that they used to offer are going to be changing, like all of us are changing, that they're going to have to find new ways of doing business to stay open. And of course, our biggest concern is our small postal outlets in our communities. And as you saw in those emails back and forth, I reiterated several times that it's very important to council that those outlets stay open in all our communities. So as for the e-post issue, e-post wasn't going to affect Canada Post. In fact, they're encouraging those new types of business. But again, this sort of alludes to that whole bigger picture that Canada Post is undertaking a global review for sure. So you would definitely want to send in something, I would think, again, reiterating how important our postal outlets are to our communities.
Brock?
Just a comment on, they talk a lot in the, this is from the union, they're talking a lot about getting into postal banking, which is kind of a return to the past, because around the turn of the century, the post offices were the main banks. Really, that's where people deposited their money and moved it around. Well, I don't know how practical that is, but it sounds like a desperate attempt to find a new business.
I would like to put a motion forward with some of our concerns that we certainly don't want to lose our small post offices. They're very important to the communities.
I'll second.
And that we are open to new thinking, new avenues to make it happen, or?
Well, yeah, I went through most of this.
Without.
Yes, I realized this was the union that was putting forth a lot of this information. But there's probably some truth in it too.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. If there's nothing else, motion read and file. Oh, Councilor Bailey. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Moving to committee reports, Fly BIA. First, is there any questions on that for Dave, or anything you want to add, Dave?
I think it's fairly self-explanatory. The PIA is meeting again Wednesday morning, and there'll be another report coming.
Thank you. Wood Valley Conservation Authority, any questions for James, or anything you want to add, James?
No, I have nothing on that.
Okay. Moving forward, Wingham BIA. Any questions for Bernie, or anything you want to add? Okay, thank you. Okay, it looks like we have a bylaw. Bylaw number 68, 2013, being a bylaw to authorize the legal clerk to sign on behalf of council an agreement of purchase and sale between the corporation of the Township of North Yarra and the Avon Maitland District School Board.
First, second, and third.
Councilor Campbell, Councilor Bailey seconds. Gary?
Good idea.
So, the council will recall that the municipality was approached by the Wingham Hospital to partner with them on the purchase of the former Wingham Public School on John Street. The Wingham Hospital contacted Township, given our preferred status under the regulation, under the Education Act, where there's a list of eligible organizations that are given the option of purchasing surplus schools from the school boards. So the hospital contacted the township based on our preferred status under the regulation to see if we could sort of be their agent and help to facilitate transactions. So that has been the extent of our involvement. The board trustees passed a motion supporting the arrangement. They want the agreement to be between the township and the school board. And as part of the transaction, there would be a direction of title that would be provided, so that while the agreement is between the township and the school board, as per the direction of title, it will be, the property will be conveyed from the school board to the hospital, and that is what will be registered on title. And there are no funds that we're providing to this transaction. We're not a banker in any way. The funds will be through the lawyers in their trust accounts.
There is a reference to $20,000. I thought some funds have to be held for a time, or
I believe that was the deposit on the offer, and that deposit is being held in trust by the lawyer.
From the hospital?
The lawyer that is working on the transaction is working for both the hospital and the municipality.
Okay.
And that money is held in trust. And the closing date for the transaction is November 14th.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Council reports and inquiries?
I've got three. I contacted Kelly earlier this morning about this. We've had a visitor visiting our collection, and she's a descendant of the Reeds in the Reed Road area. She was visiting the Deacon Cemetery 2 or 3 years ago, and took some pictures of the family tombstones. And she went back last week when she was visiting us, and she found that some of the tombstones were gone. These were tombstones that were beside an upright family tombstone. They were level with the ground. And so she gave us pictures of them. And so I mentioned this to Kelly in an email. He's going to look into it. But this is a very serious thing. If tombstones are being removed, except under very exceptional circumstances and permissions. So I thought I would bring it up in council, since we haven't investigated it yet exactly, but if this is happening, this is something that maybe somebody has some information about that could help us figure out what has happened or what went on. And so that's just for information.
Yep.
Second point, last week I was at a conference in Stratford. It was put on by the Rural Ontario Institute and Gateway Health Research of the Seaforth, dealing with the topic of healthy aging in Ontario. And it's quite an interesting program that they have, looking at getting input from various fields of expertise on what are the barriers and the facilities for growing number of elderly people that we have in the county and in this area. And they'll be coming out with a report, and I'd just like to give council a heads up. I'm going to make sure that we all get copies of this, because we do have an elderly population. In fact, I know some of them myself. And I think that in terms of promoting a healthy environment for those people, this would be, we may get some tips on things that we can do to make it easier. one of the factors that I stressed in the conference was that of transportation, which is one of the most serious ones in this area, where services are getting farther and farther away from people and less easy to contact. The third item has to do with a meeting that I was at this afternoon. I was invited to join a committee that's looking into creating a rural lens. And this is really a methodology of looking at legislation, projects, programs, policies through a special lens that evaluates it in terms of how it affects rural communities, rural areas. And Dr. Wayne Caldwell and another researcher are working with us. They met with us today. And out of this will come a policy which is guidance for government and for other organizations in looking at things that they're doing to judge whether it's going to be advantageous or detrimental to rural communities. And the end purpose would be to just, for example, have a little card on each of our desks with 10 points, let's say 10 or 12 points, so when we're making a policy, we can check it over and say, is this going to be a benefit or are there detriments in it? That sort of thing. So it'll be a grand policy, but worked right down to a very practical level that can be applied fairly easily in terms of making sure that we're giving the best benefit we can to this particular kind of community. That's all I have to say.
Vern?
At the next council meeting, we're going to have the representatives from pro and con for the depository. I know there's been a few emails going back and forth, and I'm not, I hope Gary could fill us in on this. The question that I'm going to go with is, how much time can the people have that are coming to speak against it? If we could just rectify that so the people that are coming to speak know whether they've got 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or 20 minutes. There were 3 groups I was approached by, quite eager to come down on their own dime. These are strictly volunteers that are concerned with what's going on. Gary, could you tell us how much time you're giving the pro and how much time we can give the con? And we'll go from there.
I know the representative from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization said that their normal presentation to groups and municipalities tends to be about 15 minutes, which exceeds our procedural bylaw. That being said, I felt as clerk that council would probably agree to that extra time, provided that the same time frame be given to the opposing group. But again, I take my direction from council. Is it fair to say that both groups could be given, say, 15 minutes each for their presentation, followed by some questions and answers?
The last council meeting, I understood that we were having 2 groups, one pro and one con. Is that the case, or have we extended that to 2 or 3 cons and 1 pro?
Actually, no, we had 3 people approach, and I asked for time for 3 people, and it was given, and then the questions were brought forward about the amount of time. So we're going back to 1 group. It doesn't matter who's in the group. 1 group for pro, 1 group for con, and if so, pro has 15 minutes, I would appreciate 15 minutes for the con.
That's fair. Brock?
I'm willing to go along with this, but I just wanted to express an opinion on this. There are many, many problems in the world. There are some that we can affect, some that we can't. And there are so many things that we need to do and things that we can affect directly by our action. And I'm glad that we're limiting the time on this, because I thought that we were going to be heading into a circus of pros and cons and lengthy debates and so on. And it's all important stuff. I know, I think probably most of us have read a lot of material and listened to a lot of discussions on this. It's not that we're downplaying it. It's a very, very critical issue. But at the same time, whether we decide for or against, I can't see that it's going to make a heck of a lot of difference in the long run. And so I think we ought to be spending our time on things that over which we have some control and some ability to affect an outcome. That's all.
Other concerns or questions? Deputy Reid?
The last meeting, it was brought up about a code of conduct, and just wondering how we're progressing with that. Gary? Kathy, could you speak?
I took that on as a project to take some, one that we had presented that C.A. Long had, I think it was in January, he had presented it. I went out and received code of conducts from about 15 other municipalities and reviewed them, and I have put together a code of conduct. We decided to leave it till next council meeting so that we had full council prepared to discuss it. So it is ready to go, and you'll see it on the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Anything? James?
There was some amounts from staff and myself who were in Guelph on October the 22nd. I don't know if Gary is going to have anything in his report. The students that were up here and did some work along made presentations down at the University of Guelph. And I thought it was a very good afternoon. I went on behalf of Maiden Valley. And they certainly have put a lot of work into their presentations, and they did an excellent job of presenting. I know that we're forthcoming. This material will all be coming to us. And I also received a note from Dr. Wayne Caldwell again, thanking us for going down to be there when the students made the presentation.
He was mentioning that today at the meeting.
On that, just, yeah, it was an excellent presentation. There were 7 groups that presented, and we just received today the PDF files. So now we just got those for us to take a look at. Gary and I have spoken briefly about how to get those blown up, out for councillors and the public to see. We're very premature in doing anything with the housing dam and also with the land, but I think it overall opened our eyes to the variety of options that are available to us and how to improve our riverfront as both a tourism activity as well as leisure area for our residents and visitors. So I'm looking forward to sharing that information along with Gary and Maitland Valley, and I think we're just trying to strategize about how to get those blown up and shared, because they are large, big print documents.
If there's any more inquiries?
I'm going to encourage all members of council to attend the Blind Festival 40th season, where the heart is, and to run down to the festival office and purchase season pass so that we all take part in the theater next year and attend the plays.
You're here.
Okay. Not seeing any hands up, moving to clerk administrator's report.
Okay, thank you, Reid. A couple of things. Just a reminder that the launch of the official unveiling and commissioning of the electric vehicle charging unit in Wingham will take place this Thursday at 11 o'clock across the street at the North Huron Museum. Reid Vincent mentioned that the new school in Wingham will have its official opening this Thursday at 3:30. Kelly Church, our Director of Public Works, couldn't join us tonight, but wanted me to pass along that he will be bringing forward report at the November 18th council meeting regarding trees at our municipal gravel pit on Marnock Line. I also wanted to mention that there was a meeting on October 24th at the new Maitland River Elementary School with North Huron staff, our chief of police, the principal, and a member of the parent council to talk about safety issues that were raised in a letter that we received from the principal in early October. Many of the issues that were raised in the letter have been addressed to the satisfaction of the school principal and parent council. From the meeting on the 24th, the principal and the parent council will be sending a letter to council requesting consideration for crossing guard, as well as, what was the second issue, Kim?
Snow clearing on both sides of John Street.
Thank you. So there was a request for a crossing guard and a request for an exemption on our bylaw for snow removal that both sides of John Street, I guess it would be east of Carlin Terrace, be cleared in the wintertime. So those letters will be on the November 18th council agenda for your consideration. Also wanted to note that we received confirmation last week that we will be receiving funding from the province to help us with the source water protection plans and the Part 4 administration and enforcement responsibilities under the Clean Water Act. So I believe that we are receiving about $87,500 from the province, along with other small rural municipalities, and this funding will help us with the implementation of the source water protection plans. I think you'll also recall that council is supportive of retaining the Solid Bayfield Conservation Authority to carry out the Part 4 responsibilities. So that's good news. Also wanted to note that on Thursday of last week, I received a big package of information from Central Huron regarding the redevelopment of the Grandview property. There's a big site plan and other notes. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I think it's noteworthy that we have received more information about that development proposal. We'll take a look at it. Central Huron has asked for our comments on that, and we'll make sure that council and staff and municipal engineers and so on are part of that process as well. Okay. I also wanted to note that last week, staff, North Huron staff filed 4 applications. Connie filed an application to the Rural Economic Development Fund. Pat took the lead on the application to the Ontario Trillium Foundation with Donna's assistance. Donna submitted an application to the Small and Northern Municipalities Infrastructure Program. She also submitted an application to the Ministry of Infrastructure to obtain some additional financing or funding for asset management funds. So just wanted to take this opportunity to thank municipal staff and express my appreciation for the applications that were filed last week. We're not under any obligation to submit these applications, but we believe in what we're doing. We want to make sure that we have applications in for these government programs, and I just wanted to extend my thanks to municipal staff for all the time and effort that goes into those applications, and hopefully I haven't missed anybody. But those are the ones that I'm aware of just for last week. Okay. Connie, could you update council on the arrangement that you've come to with the museum volunteers about having them staff the museum?
Sure. As you probably know, the interest in the Alice Munro Garden and the Alice Munro Nook has been very much increased the last month. Anytime the front door happens to be unlocked, we have people in the museum. I actually had somebody come to the back door of the museum last week when it was locked. And they are not coming, it's not local people that can come back in an hour or when I can get someone down there. There are people traveling to come to the museum. So I have approached the Friends of the Museum Committee. They are actually going to put in some more volunteer hours through till the end of November just to get us through. So they will be doing 2 hours on Tuesday morning, 2 hours on Tuesday afternoon, the same on Thursday, and as they have been since the summer student left in the fall, they are there all day on Fridays. So they just think it's really, really important that when people come a great distance, if we can be a little bit more accessible and a little bit more open, we would certainly have that more opportunity to engage people and maybe encourage them to come back and get involved in our area. So quite excited that they were really able to step up. They put together a schedule and they were volunteering their time. So.
James, could we send them a note of thanks on behalf of council? Just to say that we appreciate what they're doing on our behalf. Do you want that in motion?
That's fine.
Directions for you.
Thank you. I also wanted to share my time with our Director of Fire and Emergency Services. Mine was up to you.
First off, you'll find a couple of little typographical errors. My proofread kind of got disrupted collecting it, and it still makes sense, but if you look at it and think I'm a grammatical slob, my apologies. Got my report. I do have some extra copies I'll leave on the table at the back there. Just want to highlight a handful of things. I know there's been some questions about the fire code compliance of the town hall as we go forward. As the scaffolding is coming down, I'm happy to say that the building we're now in, with its reconstruction and renovations, is also compliant with Ontario Fire Code. So I know people would ask about that, so kudos to the staff for putting that in order. Second thing, and I think that's a neat compliment to our community, in the month of October we had two people out and about and heard their neighbor's smoke alarm going off and called the fire department because there was no one home, but they heard the smoke alarm going off and thought, you know, I better call in case there's something really is going on. And kind of neat to live in a town where people actually care about their neighbors enough to call and try and save their property. Other note is that we've had our third structure fire in recent months where we've had a very successful and well-managed incident that has resulted in the structure still being intact and still being able to be used to be lived in. And third one of our captains has managed the incident. So as I've reiterated before, it's really a great thing as a fire chief to know that when I'm on holidays in the Caribbean and someone's house is on fire, that our captains will do a good and effective job of managing that fire. So that was pretty cool. And then a couple of notables. The CSA, which regulates the quality breathing air that firefighters use in their air packs and people use in industry, has made some amendments and adjustments to their regulation we operate under as a result of some incidents that have occurred with fire breathing air. One being where a cylinder is being refilled, the air pack cylinder failed during the refill. Although everything was compliant with the current code, the firefighter that was doing the cylinder filling has got permanent hearing damage. Even though he had everything compliant to the code, he's, for the rest of his life, will have some serious hearing problems. And the second one is from a fire department where, due to some maintenance issues, the oil particulates got into the breathing air the firefighters were breathing. And of course, if you breathe that in, that's not good for you in the long term either. Net result of that is that the breathing air quality program that we operate under has had some changes in terms of requirements. I put an estimated cost of about $7,500 for FD&H to upgrade our stuff to comply. It might be less than that, but I'd rather put out a high number so the council's not surprised when we do that. Due to the seriousness of this program, this is something we've already started the process of getting ourselves compliant to. Because at the end of the day, once you've damaged someone's lungs or their other things due to non-compliance, you can never get it back. And second thing is that this week the NFPA standard for fire hoses and standard for the care, use, inspection, service testing, and replacement of fire hose, couplings, nozzles, and fire hose appliances. 2013 edition came out, and it recommends that all fire hose manufactured prior to July 1987 be retired from service. That will have an impact on some of the hose that we currently have in service. The exact amount of hose and the exact dollar value attached to I'm not sure, because I just found this out Friday afternoon about 4 o'clock. So you'll hear about more of that in the upcoming meetings. So those are the other two things of note. Other than that, you just got my report, but if you want a quick scan of any questions, feel free. And otherwise, I'll leave some extra copies in the back.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Moving to public gallery questions and/or comments. Trevor?
Thank you, Reeve. A couple of questions, and actually this question actually came from my wife. So we were out walking late yesterday with our new daughter, and we noticed a significant amount of leaves in the galleyways of the roads that lead, obviously, to our storm sewers. What do we do to make sure that those leaves don't actually enter the storm sewers? Can somebody explain to me what we do there?
Speak to that, in Kelly's absence.
In Kelly's absence.
If you want to leave it for Kelly, that's fine too. I'm fine with just leaving it for Kelly. I wasn't sure who would be that person to ask, but, because obviously I think it was 5 years ago, there was a service offered there was a truck that came by that sucked up all the leaves that usually got most of that stuff. Now that hasn't happened, and I think since I've in the last 5 years. So I wasn't sure whether it was the belief that the homeowners in front of that was going to clean that up, because I would doubt that would happen. At least I know from my home ownership.
Dave wants to.
In Blythe, a week and a half ago, the works employees were going up and down the streets with the loader, scraping the leaves out of the gutters and cleaning them out of the way using the actually snow removal blade.
So is that something normally that would happen, or is this something that's we look at it and think, oh, maybe we should do that, or
it's done every year?
It's done every year, I just can't remember whether it was done last year in Winga. I just can't seem to remember, but it was just something I just happened to notice or my wife noticed, and she said, what do they do with that? How does that get cleaned up? Because obviously we have at least down in Grand Park Drive, that had a substantial storm sewer problem, and flooding is always an issue with any rainfall that we tend to get here in Wingham and probably in Blythe, and I'm guessing East Waldenosh has the same problems too. So my question was, how is that managed from a standpoint of, because obviously if it gets into the storm sewer, it's a bigger cost than if it's not in there at all. I actually have one comment, and it really relates to whether the council needs to take a stand on whether they're for or against, whether it be the DGR or whatever the case may be. In my opinion only, I'm not, as a resident of North Huron, I am not wanting my council to make a stand on everything that comes within a 10-mile radius of North Huron. We have bigger fish to fry within our municipality. What I do wish is that if you're going to make a stand, you have the information beforehand. Don't make a stand and then 3 months down the road you get a whole bunch of information and it comes back and says, boy, maybe that stand wasn't right. I think the information you need to have, and then you make the stand. Not, oh, just because there's a public meeting, oh, I think we need to make a stand now. I think we got to be careful with making stands too quickly, because obviously any opinion can be taken out of context, either way, good or bad. So, and the other point I have has to do with the Canada Post. Canada Post is going to be no different than the Township of North Huron. It's going to be no different than Westcast or any large global company. They are going to have to find ways to change their revenue stream. Technology is changing everybody. and it's changing the local post office no different than the Wingham Post Office of Blythe. Canada Post has to figure that out, and yes, we don't want to lose it, and I agree with the fact that we got to make sure we have that we've mentioned to them that, yeah, it's important to us. But at the end of the day, Canada Post is the ones that put that building there. Canada Post is the ones that are employing those people. Yeah, it's economics for Wingham, but we really can't change that. They're going to be the ones that make that call. And I think to leave it more than that, I think you're wasting valuable resource to say, yep, we agree that economics for the township is great, but that's a Canada Post decision. We can't really affect it. It's no different than the GGR.
I'd just like to reply to that, Trevor. Actually, Blythe almost lost its post office a number of years ago. I don't know how many years ago. I would think it'd be about 15 years. We weren't less than that.
It's less than that.
And the village was able to talk them into taking us off the list. And the same happened with the bank. We were about to lose our bank a number of years ago. I think that was about 1995 or 96. And again, we put up a fight, had a discussion, and we won that. So we've gained a few years here and there. So I think it's worth trying.
I totally understand the power of people, but I believe that you have to take the power of people to only so far. Because the power of people, because even if they wanted to, they could say, no, okay, it's not in our plan, and we're going to just change it anyways. So I just want to be careful, as I just want to make sure we are putting time and effort as a council and even ratepayers is the things that we can change. Because at the end of the day, can we change it? Great. If we can't, let's move on to things that we can change and can affect on a global scale or a grander scale. So that was really all my points. So.
If you don't mind, Trevor, nobody stands up or says anything, and the next community doesn't know what's going on. We may have been the first to bring this subject, no matter which way that vote goes next week. There's another community watching, and another community. First thing you know, you got 60 communities that have maybe joined together with the same idea, whether it be the wind turbines, a nuclear plant, or what it is. I have to totally disagree with you and say that it is my job to bring up things that I think people that have voted me in for. And yes, we have to look at whether it's wind turbines or the geographical deposit or the factory coming. I don't care. I was at a meeting with that. I'm going to just take 2 minutes and tell the story. I was up here at this door factory that was opening up, and I was representing North Huron, and there was a nice crowd there, and we all went through it. And the mayor from West Perth, North Perth, Palmerston area over here anyway, because I always get everything mixed up like that unless it's in front of me. But watch this. He's there with one of his members from his staff, and I'm thinking, what a nice guy. He has come all the way from Mount Forest to be at this opening. Trev, he didn't come from Mount Forest to be at the opening. He came to take our 150 jobs and move it over to Palmerston because he knows that company does not have the proper location. They need 150 employees, they need a place to put it. So he is our competitor, and we have to go get that. And we have to raise several issues as we go along. And I will be at Palmerston one day too, repaying him the favor, trying to get that factory to come to Wingham. So we cannot, as a council, unless you want to stay at 5,000 people with high taxes, we cannot stay within our borders. We must think globally. We must see what we can bring to this area. They're not going to come and get us. We got to go get them.
So part of my conversation, part of my comment was not to stay within our borders. That was not my intent. My intent of my comment is, if you're going to take a stand or you're going to go somewhere, you better have the facts. Facts. Not fiction, not what you believe. You better have it rock solid. Because that's what the problems happen. You have people who don't believe in your facts, and then it just becomes a witch hunt. And it becomes a witch hunt of whether it be those jobs are going there, or they're going to Brussels, or they're going to Kitchener, or wherever. Have the facts that we need, and then take the stand. I got no problem. You wanna take a stand on something? Great. All the power to you. But don't take a stand and then the facts are different. Because that's where we get into problems. So, thank you.
Luke?
Thank you, I'm Luke Sheldon again, and I would like to thank Councillor Bailey for bringing up the departmental move to the waste facility. I would like to thank Brock for bringing up the post offices. I will buy my stamps where I think I need the most support. And I would like to ask, is there any development on the future severance bylaw? Is there any dates I should be aware of?
Official plan.
Yeah, there will be a public meeting regarding the official plan review at the December 2nd council meeting. And there are advertisements regarding that meeting are going in the local papers, the Citizen and Live and the Advance Times and Women. And so I believe there was advertisements in last week's editions, and they're also scheduled to appear in this week's editions. And again, this is a public meeting to do with the official plan review, and that's as part of the December 2nd council meeting, 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you. Okay, confirmatory bylaw number 69, 2013. Being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the council of the Township of North Carolina.
First, second, and third.
Brock and James. All in favor? Carried. Next meeting, November 18th, 2013, 7 p.m., North Carolina Council Chambers.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. We're done.